I found an old phone in my new apartment. It works, but it has only one contact, my own number. At first, I thought it was some kind of prank or forgotten relic from the previous tenant. The phone was an older model, slightly scratched but functional. Out of curiosity, I tried calling the number, expecting my own phone to ring. Instead, the call connected, and I heard breathing on the other end. My heart pounded as a faint voice whispered, "Why did you leave me?" I hung up immediately, my hands trembling. Maybe it was a coincidence, some crossed signal or a glitch. Still, unease settled deep in my chest. I checked the call history, but there were no records, no outgoing, no incoming, nothing. Just as I was about to set the phone down, it vibrated. A text appeared on the screen. "I'm still here." My stomach dropped. The number was my own, yet I hadn't sent that message. Determined to understand what was happening, I sent a reply. "Who is this?" A few seconds later, another text arrived. "You." My breath caught in my throat. It didn't make sense. Maybe someone was playing a trick on me. But how? I tried turning the phone off, but the screen flickered and stayed on. My reflection in the black glass looked distorted, as if it wasn't entirely mine. That night, I placed the phone in a drawer, but I couldn't sleep. A persistent buzzing filled my ears, though my actual phone was silent. Finally, I got up and checked the old device. Dozens of missed calls from my own number. My heart pounded as I hesitantly answered one. Silence. Then, in a voice identical to mine, it whispered, "I want to come back." I felt a chill crawl down my spine. The next day, I decided to get rid of the phone. I took it outside and smashed it against the pavement. The screen shattered, but for a brief moment, I saw my own face staring back at me, twisted in horror. I left the broken pieces and rushed inside, locking the door behind me. My hands shook as I picked up my regular phone to reassure myself. But when I unlocked the screen, a new notification appeared. A single text from an unknown number. "You can't escape yourself." My vision blurred. My breath came in short gasps. I dropped the phone as if it burned me. The old device was gone, yet its presence lingered. As I backed away, the mirror across the room caught my reflection. But it wasn't just me. Something else was there watching, waiting. And then it smiled. My neighbor goes out into the yard every night at 11:34 p.m. and buries something. One day, I decided to follow him. I had watched him for weeks, always carrying a small bundle wrapped in cloth. He moved with a strange rhythm, precise and silent, as if performing a ritual. That night, I waited in the shadows, my heart pounding. When he stepped outside, I followed at a distance, careful not to make a sound as he approached his usual spot near the old oak tree. He knelt down and dug with his hands, moving the dirt effortlessly. The moonlight cast eerie shadows over his hunched form as he carefully placed the bundle into the hole. My breath caught in my throat. What was he hiding every night? I shifted slightly to get a better view, but my foot snapped a twig. He froze. My stomach dropped as he slowly turned his head, his gaze locking onto mine through the darkness. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then, without a word, he stood up and walked toward me. I wanted to run, but my legs refused to move. He stopped just a few feet away, his face unreadable. "You shouldn't be here," he whispered. His voice was calm, almost gentle, but something about it sent a chill down my spine. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small object, holding it out for me to see. I hesitated before taking it, my fingers trembling. It was an old photograph, yellowed with age. I held it up to the dim light and gasped. It was a picture of me taken from my own backyard. My blood ran cold. "I've been keeping them safe," he said, gesturing to the buried bundles. My mind raced. Had he been collecting photos of me? Or worse, was it something more sinister? I took a step back, but he reached for my arm, his grip surprisingly strong. "You need to understand," he murmured. I yanked free and ran, my pulse hammering in my ears. I didn't stop until I was inside my house, locking the door behind me. My hands shook as I fumbled to check my phone. I needed to call someone, but as I opened my gallery, my breath caught. Dozens of photos had appeared, images of me sleeping, walking, sitting in my own home, each one taken from just outside my window. My vision blurred with panic as a new notification popped up. A message from an unknown number. "You shouldn't have followed me." My throat tightened as I slowly turned toward the window. The curtains were drawn, but I could feel eyes on me watching. My phone vibrated again. Another message. "Look outside." Against my better judgment, I reached for the curtain, my hands ice cold. I pulled it back just an inch, and there he was, standing motionless in my yard, staring up at me. And then he smiled. I received a letter from myself from the future, but there was only one phrase: "Don't go to the party on the 15th." At first, I thought it was a joke. The envelope was old, the ink slightly faded, yet the handwriting was unmistakably mine. There was no return address, no explanation, just those words. I checked the calendar. There was only one party on the 15th, a birthday celebration for my friend Alex. I tried to brush it off, but an uneasy feeling settled deep inside me. As the days passed, I couldn't shake the letter from my mind. Why would my future self warn me? Was it a prank or something more? I debated skipping the party, but curiosity nodded me. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe I was overthinking. On the night of the 15th, I stood by my front door, keys in hand, hesitating. Then, impulsively, I decided to go. I wasn't going to let a cryptic message dictate my life. The party was lively, music thumping, laughter filling the air. For a while, I forgot about the letter. I mingled, had a drink, and felt silly for worrying. Then, at exactly 11:47 p.m., the lights flickered. A loud crash sounded from the kitchen, followed by a scream. My stomach twisted as I pushed through the crowd. When I reached the doorway, I froze. A man stood there, his face obscured by a hood, holding something gleaming in his hand, a knife. Panic erupted. People shoved past me, scrambling to escape. My heart pounded as I ducked behind a table, my breath coming in short gasps. The man moved through the chaos with terrifying precision, as if searching for someone. For me, I remembered the letter. My future self had tried to stop this. If I had listened, I wouldn't be here. A cold realization settled in. I had changed something, but not enough. I needed to get out. I crawled toward the back door, every movement feeling agonizingly slow. Just as I reached for the handle, I heard my name. I turned, and the hooded man was there, inches away. His knife gleamed under the dim lights, and for a split second, I saw his face, my face. My own eyes stared back at me, filled with something dark, something inhuman. My chest tightened with terror as he whispered, "You shouldn't have come." Everything blurred. My vision swam as pain exploded in my side. The world tilted, the sounds around me fading. I collapsed, my own voice echoing in my head. And then I woke up, gasping. I sat up in bed, my hands shaking. It was the morning of the 15th. The letter lay on my nightstand untouched. My body was unmarked, unharmed, but the pain had felt so real. My heart pounded as I stared at the letter, my decision now terrifyingly clear. I wasn't going to the party. I found a portrait in my locker that looks exactly like me, but with a signature from 1923. The paper was old, yellowed at the edges, and the charcoal drawing was so detailed, it felt like the eyes were following me. My name wasn't written anywhere, yet the resemblance was undeniable. A chill ran down my spine. Who had put this here? I glanced around the empty hallway, but there was no one in sight. Carefully, I folded the portrait and tucked it into my bag. That evening, I examined it under better light. Every detail matched my eyes, my jawline, even the small scar above my eyebrow. But that was impossible. The date at the bottom read June 3rd, 1923, followed by a name. Larkwood. I had never heard of them before. A quick search online yielded nothing useful. My unease deepened. Was this some elaborate prank, or was there something more to it? I had to find out. The next day, I showed the portrait to my history teacher, Mr. Collins. He studied it carefully, his expression unreadable. Where did you find this? He finally asked. When I explained, his face paled. Larkwood was a student here. 100 years ago. They vanished without a trace. A strange silence settled between us. My stomach twisted. Vanished, I echoed. He nodded gravely. No one ever found out what happened to them. Determined to learn more, I visited the school archives. After hours of searching, I found an old yearbook from 1923. My breath caught in my throat as I flipped to the student photos. There, among the faded images, was a face identical to mine. Same features, same eyes. The name below read Elias Larkwood. My head spun. Was this just a coincidence, or was I somehow connected to them? I had to know the truth. That night, I couldn't sleep. The portrait sat on my desk, almost taunting me. At midnight, my phone buzzed with a notification. A new email from an unknown sender. The subject line read, "We need to talk." My fingers trembled as I opened it. The message was short but chilling. "You found my portrait. Now, find me." A location was attached, a place I had never been before. My heart pounded. This wasn't a prank. Someone or something was waiting. Despite the fear clawing at my chest, I knew I had to go. The next evening, I followed the address to an abandoned building on the outskirts of town. The air felt heavy, charged with something I couldn't explain. As I stepped inside, my breath hitched. Hanging on the wall was another portrait, new, untouched by time. It was me, but this time, the date read June 3, 2024, and beneath it, a new signature, Elias Larkwood. My shadow has stopped listening to me. It moves on its own, and I'm beginning to suspect that it knows something I don't. At first, I thought I was imagining things, just a trick of the light. But then, I noticed it lagging behind, pausing when I kept walking, twisting unnaturally when I stood still. The worst part, sometimes when I turned quickly enough, I saw it standing there, staring at me. But shadows don't stare. Shadows don't think, do they? I started testing it. I waved my hand, but it didn't follow immediately. It hesitated, like it was deciding whether to obey. One night, I placed a flashlight on the floor and moved in different directions. The shadow did too, but not in sync. It twitched, stretched the wrong way, and at one point, it even seemed to reach toward me. My stomach twisted. This wasn't normal. My shadow wasn't just failing to follow me, it was resisting. Then, the dream started. I'd wake up in cold sweat, remembering flashes of something dark slithering along my walls, whispering in a voice I almost recognized my own. My reflection in the mirror seemed different too. Not my face exactly, but the way my shadow loomed behind me, too tall, too sharp. One night, as I brushed my teeth, I turned suddenly. My shadow didn't move. It just stood there, watching. I stopped leaving my room after dark. But one evening, the lights flickered, and my shadow stretched unnaturally across the floor, even though I hadn't moved. My breath caught. Slowly, it lifted an arm. My arms were at my sides. My heart pounded as I backed away. The shadow took a step forward. I ran, throwing open my bedroom door, but my shadow was already in the hallway, waiting for me. I screamed. I don't remember how I got to the basement, but I slammed the door behind me, panting. The single light bulb flickered above, casting strange, jagged shapes along the walls. My shadow pulled at my feet, still and quiet. But then it started to rise. Not along the floor, not on the wall. It peeled itself off the ground, standing upright, separating from me entirely. My own shape, but wrong. Its head tilted, like it was amused. You've ignored me long enough, it whispered in my voice. My breath hitched. Now, it's my turn. The light flickered, and for a moment, everything went dark. When it came back on, I was standing in the corner, looking at myself. But I wasn't in control anymore. My hands moved on their own. My lips curled into a smile I didn't intend. And my shadow, it stood in front of me free, stretching its fingers, finally alive. I found a house in the woods that didn't exist before. Inside are photos of my family, but I have never seen these moments. The house was old, yet there were no signs of decay. Dust should have settled on the furniture, but everything looked clean, as if someone had been expecting me. The photos were framed along the walls, each one eerily familiar. My parents, my sister, even me captured in places I didn't recognize, at events I didn't remember. I picked up one of the frames. It showed my family gathered around a birthday cake, my sister blowing out candles. But the date scrawled on the bottom was impossible, 2 years before she was born. My stomach tightened. Another photo showed me standing by a lake, smiling, but I had never been there. My hands trembled as I flipped through more. Who took this? Who knew my family so well? And why were they here? A shadow flickered at the end of the hall. I turned sharply, my breath shallow. Hello? My voice barely broke the silence. No response. But as I stepped forward, something changed. The air felt heavier. The walls seemed closer. Another photo caught my eye, and my blood ran cold. It was me lying in bed, asleep, but the perspective was from my own ceiling, as if someone had been watching from above. My legs locked. Panic surged through me. I needed to leave. I turned, but the hallway stretched longer than before, the doorway impossibly far. The walls were shifting. The pictures no longer showed my family. They showed me, each frame capturing a different moment from my life, sitting at my desk, walking to work, eating dinner. My hands shook as I realized something horrifying. These weren't old photos. They were recent, taken without my knowledge. A final frame loomed near the stairs. My breath caught in my throat. It was blank, except for a single line of text at the bottom. Welcome home. The floor creaked behind me. Eyes ran through my veins. I turned, heart hammering, and saw a figure standing in the darkness, watching. It looked exactly like me. Then it smiled. The last thing I heard before everything went black was my own voice whispering, "You should never come back." I received an SMS. "You will die in 7 days." At first, I thought it was a joke, but then people around me started dying. The message came from an unknown number, with no reply option. I laughed it off, probably some prank. But the next day, my coworker James collapsed at his desk, dead from a sudden aneurysm. That night, I reread the message, my hands clammy. It couldn't be connected. Right, just a coincidence. It had to be. On the second day, a neighbor fell down the stairs, breaking his neck. On the third, a woman I barely knew was hit by a bus just feet away from me. The pattern was forming, too close to ignore. My stomach twisted with dread. Was I causing this? Were these deaths warnings? I tried blocking the number, but the message remained. The countdown in my mind continued. 4 days left. I had to do something. By the 5th day, I was terrified to leave my house. But staying inside didn't help. That night, I saw movement outside my window. A dark figure stood beneath the street lamp, unmoving, watching. My phone buzzed again. A new message. "Stop hiding." My throat tightened. I yanked the curtains shut, my pulse hammering. Who was sending these? And why was I still alive while others around me kept dying? The 6th day arrived with another death. My best friend, Emily, was found in her apartment, no signs of struggle, no cause of death, just gone. I broke down. "What do you want?" I screamed into the empty room. My phone vibrated. A final message appeared. One more, my blood ran cold. One more, and then me. Or was I the last? I couldn't breathe. I needed to stop this. But how do you stop something you don't understand? On the 7th day, I didn't sleep. I sat in my living room, waiting, expecting the worst. 11:59 p.m. The air was heavy, suffocating. Then midnight. My phone buzzed. "It's time." A shadow moved in the corner of my vision. My body refused to respond. The lights flickered, and in the reflection of my TV screen, I saw it. A figure, tall and hollow-eyed, standing behind me. My heart slammed against my ribs as a cold breath whispered in my ear. "You should have died first." Darkness swallowed me. When I opened my eyes, it was morning. My phone lay beside me. Screen cracked. The messages were gone. Everything was silent. Had it ended? I checked the news, no deaths reported. I let out a shaky breath, relief flooding me. But then, my phone vibrated one last time. A new game begins. My reflection in the screen blinked, but I hadn't moved.